What if I told you that something most of us barely even notice, like, a construction site just popping up down the street? What if that could actually be responsible for hundreds of thousands of injuries, dozens of fatalities, and billions in economic costs, all within just 1 year? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into a topic that's honestly far more critical and complex than it often gets credit for. We're talking about health and safety in the construction industry. And look, this isn't just about the hard hats and the high vis vests, though, yeah, those are definitely part of the picture. It's really about human lives. It's
Mhm.
about significant risks and these huge ripple
Uh-huh.
effects about things that affect insurance, productivity, all of it. So the source material we're drawing on for this deep dive, it's this really comprehensive document. It meticulously details health and safety in construction. Our
Yeah.
mission today, well, it's too quickly, but, thoroughly unpick the key statistics. We want to bring those numbers to life with some specific scenarios, real situations, and then explore the surprisingly huge impact on things like insurance and overall work output. The goal is for you to walk away with a solid, well-informed grasp of why this topic matters so profoundly. So, okay, with those big numbers kind of hanging in the air, how do we start categorizing these incidents? When we talk about health and safety in construction, what are the buckets these problems usually fall into?
Yeah, that's exactly the right place to start because while the overall numbers are striking, understanding the three core categories gives us the real detail. So first up, we have work-related ill health. Now, this isn't just like someone catching a cold on site. This refers specifically to illnesses or conditions that develop because of work activity. Think things like respiratory problems from breathing in dust or chronic musculoskeletal disorders from all the heavy lifting or repetitive tasks. Then, tragically, there are fatal injuries. That means, quite simply, a death directly resulting from work activity on site. And finally, non-fatal injuries. These are any direct work-related injuries that thankfully don't result in death, though they can still be incredibly severe, life-changing even. What's often surprising, I think, even for people who know the industry a bit, is the proportion of these categories and, how they break down.
And when you look at the raw figures for these, I mean, the scale really hits you. Our source points to 78,000 workers suffering from that work-related ill health you mentioned. 78,000. And then for injuries, we saw 51 work-related fatal injuries alongside a staggering 47,000 work-related non-fatal injuries. Those numbers are they're substantial. And that's just for 1 year we're talking about.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating, or maybe revealing, is when you drill down into the breakdown of those figures, it tells us so much about the specific risks, the ones really prevalent in construction. For instance, take that 17,000 for work-related ill health. Over half, 52%, were from musculoskeletal disorders.
Right, so that's like back problems, repetitive strain,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
precisely. Injuries to muscles, tendons, nerves, often caused by the heavy lifting, the awkward postures, the vibration from tools, stuff that's just kind of inherent to the job if not managed properly. Then another 18% were actually due to stress, depression, and anxiety, which is increasingly recognized.
Yeah, that's significant too.
Definitely. And the remaining 30% were other conditions, like those respiratory issues we touched on. Now, when we turn to the 51 fatal injuries, it's sobering. A shocking 52% were due to falls from height.
52% still. Wow. You'd think with all the focus on that.
You would. And that persistent high rate, it isn't just a number, right? It really points to these fundamental ongoing challenges in making sure working at height is safe. It suggests maybe either shortcuts are still being tolerated, or maybe essential training isn't quite landing, or perhaps the supervision isn't there. Other big causes for fatalities included being trapped by something collapsing or overturning, and being struck by a moving object like tools falling or materials. Both of those were around 11%. And then struck by a moving vehicle, that was 10%.
Okay. And what about the non-fatal ones, the 47,000? What's causing those mostly?
Well, for the 47,000 non-fatal injuries, the top causes paint a similar picture of, let's say, everyday hazards becoming dangerous. 25%, a quarter, were slips, trips, or falls in the same line.
Just tripping over stuff.
Basically, yeah. Which really highlights basics like tidiness, housekeeping issues, simple things, often. Falls from height still made up a big chunk, 20%, even for the non-fatal ones, so still a major risk. And then 18% were injuries sustained while handling, lifting, or carrying. Back to those musculoskeletal risks again. And struck by a moving object accounted for another 12%.
It's just it's crucial to remember, isn't it, that these aren't just statistics on a page. They represent real individuals, actual people,
Yeah.
real families, real struggles, people whose lives were, profoundly altered or tragically cut short because of something that happened on a job site. But yeah, these numbers, they only tell part of the story until you kind of see them play out in real life scenarios. And this is where it hits home, I think. We've got several scenarios from the source material that paint a really vivid picture, how these things actually happen and who gets affected. What's one that immediately comes to mind?
Well, a common one, unfortunately, is something like the unguarded chop saw injury. You can just picture it, right? A site joiner, maybe they're under pressure to get the job done fast. They use a chop saw, but the blade guard's missing. Maybe it was taken off. Maybe it broke. Anyway, their hand slips, bang, a deep cut. Need surgery, weeks off work recovering. This ties directly into those non-fatal injury stats,
Yeah.
specifically machinery injuries. And it really underscores the danger of bypassing safety features, even for a second.
Yeah, terrifying. A choice made in a moment, maybe to save a few minutes, but with really long-term consequences. What about an issue that affects, like, a whole team, not just one person?
Absolutely. Consider the fire exit blocked.
Yeah.
During an emergency scenario, this happens more than you'd think. Maybe during a renovation project, site storage is just going to overflows, boxes, materials, whatever,
Right.
and it ends up completely blocking a designated emergency exit. Then imagine a fire alarm goes off, could be a drill, could be real. Workers head for the exit, and it's blocked. They have to scramble, turn back, find another way. Causes confusion, panic, significant delay. And yeah, it's not just a fire hazard in itself. It points to a systemic failure, doesn't it? Site management, emergency planning. In a real fire, that could easily lead to multiple casualties.
Definitely. And what about something as seemingly simple as a ladder? I bet those are involved pretty often.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The fall from faulty ladder is like classic, sadly. Picture this. A laborer needs to get something, grabs a ladder.
Yeah.
Doesn't check it properly first. Maybe they're in a rush. There's a cracked rung. Perhaps it was hard to spot, maybe covered in mud or paint. They put their weight on it and it gives way. They fall, fracture their ankle.
Ouch.
Yeah. And it connects straight back to that leading cause, falls from height. But it also really highlights how critical those simple routine equipment checks are. It's often the basic stuff, the quick glance, the pre-use check that prevents serious harm.
That makes total sense. And then there are the other kinds of harm, right? The ones that aren't so dramatic, maybe, but build up over time, like the health impacts.
Exactly. That's where the prolonged dust exposure case comes in. It illustrates this perfectly. Imagine a team, they're working for days, maybe weeks, sanding down MDF panels inside. But the ventilation is poor. Maybe the dust extraction system isn't switched on or it's faulty. And masks, maybe worn inconsistently, maybe not the right type. So months later, one of the workers starts developing respiratory symptoms, coughing, shortness of breath. It gets investigated, and it's traced directly back to breathing in all that wood dust over that period.
Right.
That's a clear example of work-related ill health, the kind that creeps up on you, accumulates slowly,
Yeah.
makes it harder sometimes to link back directly, but it's just as devastating in the long run.
Yeah, insidious is the right word. And finally, one that always makes me wince a bit. Electricity. What did the sources show there?
Ah, yes. The electric shock from poor isolation. A really prime example of a near-fatal incident,
Mm-hmm.
or potentially fatal. So you have a site electrician, they're tasked with replacing some light fittings, but the circuit they're working on, it hasn't been properly isolated. Maybe the lockout procedure wasn't followed correctly, maybe the documentation was incomplete or just ignored. Someone flicked a switch back on somewhere else, they made contact, they get an electric shock.
Gosh.
Now, in the scenario described, they recovered. But it could easily have been fatal. It just hammers home the absolute necessity of robust energy isolation procedures. Lockout, take out. Physically locking all power sources so they cannot be accidentally switched back on while someone's working. It's literally a life or death protocol. No shortcuts allowed.
It's just astonishing, really, how these seemingly minor oversights or these little shortcuts, often born from pressure, or maybe just complacency, can have such profound, life-altering consequences for individuals. So, okay, we've talked quite a bit about the human costs, the injuries, illnesses, but what about the broader ripple effect? What does all this actually mean for the companies involved, beyond the immediate tragedy for the worker? Because there's got to be a significant financial impact, right? And operational impact, too, that often maybe goes unmentioned.
Oh, absolutely. If we connect this all to the bigger picture, yeah, a consistent lack of good health and safety practices hits a company's bottom line directly, hard. And it can even affect their basic ability to operate. Let's look at insurance first because that's a huge area.
Okay.
Okay, so for work-related illnesses, think back to those musculoskeletal problems or
Yeah.
respiratory issues. If an insurance company sees a pattern, lots of workers getting sick because of their job conditions, that's a massive red flag for them.
Right. They see risk.
Exactly. They see a company with poor health and safety management, and that inevitably leads to higher insurance premiums. More claims mean higher costs. It directly raises the company's operational expenses. Now, with fatal injuries, these are obviously the most serious incidents from an insurer's point of view. A fatality, like one of those falls from height, triggers huge insurance payouts to the family. There are significant legal fees involved, investigations, potentially heavy fines from regulators. An insurer might then react by hiking the cost of future policies exponentially. Or, honestly, they might even refuse to insure the company altogether if they deem the risk profile just too high.
Wow. So it could actually put a company out of business.
It absolutely could. Being uninsurable in construction is basically a death sentence for the business. And then even the non-fatal injuries like the slips, trips, the lifting injuries, while not deadly, they can still cause long absences from work, significant time off. And every single claim, whether it's for medical costs or compensation, while someone's recovering, every claim negatively impacts that company's claims history. A poor claims history means, again, more expensive insurance down the line. And often it means much stricter safety checks and requirements imposed by the insurer themselves. It becomes this ongoing burden.
Okay, so the insurance implications are huge. What about beyond that? Just the general economic cost?
Yeah, beyond insurance, the broader economic cost and the lost output is just, well, it's staggering. Our source material highlights a total economic cost estimated at $1.4 billion.
Billion with a B.
With a B, $1.4 billion due to these health and safety incidents in construction annually. And perhaps even more shockingly, a figure of 2.5 million working days are lost each year.
2.5 million days.
Yep. Lost purely because of these injuries and illnesses in this one sector. And, that's not just lost wages for the workers, although that's part of it. That figure factors in healthcare costs, legal fees, the cost of incident investigations, massive lost productivity on sites, delays, even the cost of replacing injured workers, hiring temporary staff, retraining. It just paints this picture of an industry essentially bleeding money and productivity from issues that are, in large part, entirely preventable.
So this deep dive, it really hammers home that neglecting health and safety, it isn't just, morally wrong, though it absolutely is. It's also a massive economic burden. It impacts everyone from the individual workers and their families, right up to the stability and the profitability of entire businesses and even national productivity figures. It's truly foundational. So just to quickly recap our journey today then, we've kind of pulled back the curtain on the really substantial numbers behind health and safety incidents in construction. We've tried to bring them vividly to life through those specific, impactful scenarios, showing how these things actually happen. And then we laid bare the profound economic consequences that ripple out, hitting insurance costs, causing massive lost productivity. This exploration, I think, truly shows how health and safety isn't just some regulatory checkbox you tick. It's a fundamental element, foundational, as you said, essential for any successful ethical operation, and impacts everything from individual lives right up to multi-billion-dollar industries.
Yeah, and thinking about all this, it really raises an important question, I think, for you, the listener. How might understanding these specific risks, the falls, the dust, the faulty equipment, and seeing their huge ripple effects in construction, how might that change how you view safety in your own daily life? Or, in any environment you encounter, whether that's your own workplace, even if it's not construction or your home, or even just a public space you're walking through, what sort of unseen costs, human or financial, might be lurking if we, collectively, don't prioritize safety?
That is a powerful thought to consider, something to definitely mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep exploring the unseen implications of the world around you.